Okay. Uh, yeah. Good morning, all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on the time zone that you're in. Today, we will talk about application security. This is not going to be a very high technical topic as such. We will try to cover the practical aspects of application security because security is relatively broader terminology. Earlier, we were not considering security that much, but as we go along with IoT and all those stuff, where our applications are going to be exposed to multiple people, multiple different kind of people. We are no longer developing applications for browsers alone. We are developing for anybody. The security is more important, and the systems are going to communicate with each other. In IoT world, your applications will not just be coming from your users. It might come from anybody else also. That we will see in detail why this landscape is changing. This application security landscape is changed, and it exposes a lot of new challenges. So this can be addressed not just by your technical aspects, but also about your process, people, the culture, everything together. Only we can address the security issues. To be specific, today we are going to talk about some of the practices, good practices that we have, but they end up being bad practices for application security unintentionally, and that is what we are going to see today. So now, before we approach the security problem today, we need to understand what changed, so that we know how we prepare ourselves. Because if you don't know the change, and if you don't want to change, and then you try to address security, then probably you're doing something really, really wrong. Because security is something that new threats come every day in and day out. You need to be up to speed with what you try to do. There are three aspects that we see today. It's not just related to security, but as a technologist, these are all the three people who influence you, your life, your technical life, upside down. So, am I clear?
Yes, Satish.
Okay, I think I get some noise actually.
No, I haven't sure that.
Okay, yeah. So now there are three things that we need to understand them clearly. They might look like a very simple three-letter words, but they make a lot of difference with our daily life. Web is not same. Today's web is very, very different that we have seen in the previous sessions. And then we are living in a world of API. In fact, this API is gaining more momentum now. In fact, today's talk is more about API and around that how the security is being placed. And then open source. Open source is very good. It's actually in some way you know what is there inside, but at the same time you need to be little cautious about the kind of libraries that you use. So these are all the things that is changing. Bottom line, this is what we need to consider. 3 points. Being bigger is no more an advantage. That everybody realized, be it as a corporates or individuals, they are realized. It's not like I do a lot of things. It no longer makes sense. I do one thing clearly. Two, I can connect to other people and then communicate with them, get my services, get other services. And that is what going to make you more powerful today, because we are living in a connected world. Technology is with users now, because nowadays the apps that we see, they are not just developed by developers, scientists. They are developed by even small people. Now we know some ads where even 6-year-old developing an app and then earning crores. That's a different story. Then we like it or not, we all are connected. We, in the sense, our apps, everything is connected. And when you're going to a connected world, you need to be more cautious, because there will be strangers, friends, not just your families. So it's like you go out and then socialize yourself with outside family members. That's how you need to consider. Now, software is no longer a family affair. They make friends, invite guests. So let us see the technical aspects of making friends and then invite guests. Let us consider a simple banking applications. Earlier, you used to have banking applications. For example, SBI, you will go to SBI bank and then you will do your stuff, which means your family members, that is your user, come to your bank and then do stuff. Then we had our browser internet applications where it is still family affair. You go to SBI portal and then take money, deposit money. But now, are we doing that? No, we are transferring from ICICI to SBI, Google Pay to SBI, and then we are paying through the merchant's device. So these devices are not SBI's property, right? So these devices make friends with SBI. SBI makes friends with these people, and then they invite guests also. Guests in the sense, new people will come into picture, your point of sales and all those stuff. So it is going to be a lot of different people, strangers come into your system. And when strangers come, it is good because you are going into a socialist world, but at the same time, you need to be a bit cautious, otherwise you lose your individuality, your security. That's the idea. We are in the times where we as a developer developers, as architects, as business analysts, we all need to change. And there are a lot of things that we need to change, and we need to choose the direction, items that we would like to do. And who wants to change? It's everybody who wants to change. It's not like not even a single person who doesn't want to change. But let us get into this. Who wants to change? That is, who wants a change? It's everybody, sorry. But who wants to change? Probably, okay, I'm ready, but I will do it after 1 month. My current assignment will get over. That is the answer. Okay, so who wants to lead the change is the place where we left. Hardly we find people there. It's very, very risky area. If you are in that, good luck to you. That's what we know every day. But now we are getting into this. So if you want to really change, then put your problem into 3 slots: people, process, technology, and keep technology as the last part. Today, technology is changing left and right. If technology change, consider that the process are supposed to be changed. And if the process change, consider that people are supposed to be changed. That's how we need to look at it. And this is common for any change that we are trying to do, including security. Now, this is actually one of the first earlier programming software projects. I think it's in NASA. It is taken in NASA. So you see a lot of people working on simple problems. So single problems, not simple problems, single problem. That is how the softwares were developed earlier. Are we living in this age now? No. Nowadays, you see, we are developing with distributed, self-organized, small teams. We are working with the small teams. So now you consider in agile world, we live with pizza-sized teams. So 8 maximum. That's the size that we have. And then what is self-organized? In your team, you have UX, you have developer, you have BAs, you have quality analyst, and you have managers. So every team is like work in a silos. So is this a welcoming change? Yes, it's a welcoming change because it makes our work much faster. We can go to market earlier. That's a good thing. But at the same time, the problem is the kind of security. Compared to the previous one, where we organize our. In fact, if you have been to development 10 years before, earlier companies categorize developers into these slots. That is, backend developers, UI developers. In UI also they will say Java, desktop application developer, where we work on Java, Swing, VC++. And then JSP developers, ASP developers. HTML is not considered as a developer, but HTML designer, HTML prototype people. That is how we categorize. We categorized people based on the technology stack. That is how we were categorizing the people. But now we are no longer there. We have some fully attractive word that is called full stack developer, where it is the same developer who will do backend, front end, database, DevOps, infrastructure as a code, anything you name, we will do it. That's a good thing. In fact, we all would like to go there. We will see whether this is actually good or bad in shortly. What is the practical problem that we'll be seeing through this. In full stack world, everybody can do everything. That is good. But at the same time, consider there is a person who was like a Java developer for a day in and day out. At the end of the day, suddenly you are coming and then saying, okay, so now onwards you are becoming fine. So now we will talk about the practical issues that we faced. We were running a system in production for some time. It was all running. But all of a sudden, one day, all our indexed data from Elasticsearch cluster is lost. And the bad part is we had no clue what happened. None of the log messages were present in our systems. And that's actually a problem. But luckily, in our case, it was an indexed data. So what we did is we re-indexed the data, we were up and running. But it took a lot of time for us to understand what is the problem, because there was no log messages. We will see the problem later, because it took a lot of time actually for us. Now, there is a booking system where a normal user can perform anything that an agent can perform. And it was definitely a data breach, because agents were supposed to do bulk booking, and the normal user also was doing bulk booking or with some whatever medium it was actually. Then application started showing wrong reports with some wrong data, and then resulted in poor decision making. These decision making sometimes cost you much based on the data that you operate on, the decision that you make. If it is a financial system, it can cost you heavily. And we face that problem also. Okay, now the problem is we all were thinking about what is the culprit and all those stuff. But if you watched James Bond movie, this is what we get. Sometimes we are so focused on our enemies, but we forget to watch our friends. And that is applicable to you and your softwares. Now, if you remember in one of my previous slides, we talked about friends and guests. Okay. So what happened is, for the problem number 1, where we lost the data, we had that microservices environment where the services are all secured, but between services they can talk to each other easily. There was no security established. And what happened, one of our service by mistake called an API that deletes the data. And we had no clue because we trust them. We do not suspect because it's ultimately our friend. That is what we consider. But we lost the data. And then the second problem is even more simple. And then it is actually, in fact, it was like really, really bad. You don't need a security or hacker, high quality hacker to hack the application. I will tell you a simple solution. All that you need to do is just open your Chrome browser, open the inspect tab, and then go to CSS and then remove the class called hide, and everything is visible. Can anybody guess what happened there? What was the culprit? Anybody can unmute and then share your answers. So what happened in our application is, we opened the application, log in as a user, go to the inspect tab of Chrome, and then select the CSS tab, and then remove hide class. What was the mistake that we did?
There was some UI check to call different APIs with different input, or maybe the same API with different inputs for agent and regular user.
Okay, so here you can see the full stack user, full stack developer coming into JavaScript. In Java, when you are doing servlet, you will implement role-based UI, where you say, okay, if the user has admin role, show this API. If the user has user role, show this. If the user doesn't have roles, do not show this. And that logic was implemented in JavaScript. Yeah, it was good because the performance is better and I'm really equipped to do so. That's all fine. But it is not an excuse that you don't put a check on your server side, because server is single point of failure. And if you let your browser to decide which role perform what, there are two problems that you are inviting. Even anybody who knows how that inspect tab works, they can do whatever they want to do. At the end of the day, in today's world, our APIs are not just for browsers. It can come from Android, it can come from anybody. And then those people, if they are not aware of these checks, we are just making sure that unintentionally also our system gets into corruption. So this is the place where we need to be very, very watchful. We are going into an API world where if you want to implement security, security still stays with your server. This is a basic logic. It's not an excuse. Okay, you can do a lot of checks in your front end. You can make your client more intelligent. All that you can do. That's not a problem. But at the end of the day, we need to be mindful. If the call comes to us without verifying, you are not letting that into our database or our internal systems. And that is a mistake that we did. Now, this is what I just told. So transactions were authorized because our full stack developer was very busy. He was highly occupied, and then he signed everything that he got, and finally it got corrupted. Now, API is the gateway, and you can see many of the applications that we see today, they are all locked, and the lock is actually in a bad shape. This is the lock. So if you look at from outside, whether you have all the security mechanism in place, yes, we have security mechanism in place. But is it sufficient? No, God only knows. So this is the problem that we have. In microservices, how it can corrupt. So at the end of the day, when a breach happens, you cannot go and tell your customers or stakeholders because we implemented a new technology and then the breach happened. Breach is just a breach. Loss is just a loss. Whether you are using latest or the old legacy technology doesn't matter. So we need to be really, really cautious about whenever we touch something, look at security. That is why if you look at this banking financial companies, they put a lot of effort to advertise the principle called security by design. What they say is security should be there as part of your requirement document. You cannot do it at the end of the day after your delivery. You see some magic tool will come and help you in security. No, you are making a mistake. So you need to think about security and always consider breach is just a breach. When I attended these kind of security session, I'm not a security expert, but I would like to just understand about security. And I had this wonderful opportunity to meet one of the practical person. That is, I think he works in a bank for last 20-25 years, and then he works in a security department. These kind of people, it's hard to see them, and I was fortunate to see him. And the answer that he gave, we all asked, how do you secure your system? And the most logical answer that he gave is, we cannot just think that we secure our system because security is an ongoing process. We might, the one point that he told that inspired me is, as a security expert, you might be looking at 100 loopholes, but for an hacker, all that it matters is one simple weak link. So we need to always look at in detail about what is that single weak link that we have. And then with services being exposed to each other, by trusting each other, we are exposing not just one weak link, we are opening up plenty of weak links. So fundamental problem that I see is we approach security as technological problem. It's not technological problem. It is actually, you need to consider it is techno and logical problem. So there are logical problems also. So you need to always look at this aspects when you plan for your security. So make sure you put your boundaries as much as possible. There is something called defense in depth or something like that, where you will put multiple layers. If you look at the old kingdom and all those stuff, they will have layers of security. That is the place where you have level 1 security, level 2 security, and all those stuff. Think that each of the security will not trust other level of security, and that is how you need to secure your systems. And always you need to prepare for the change, because the attacks comes as and when the new protocol comes, when new technology comes, new process comes. For example, that the issues that we talked about today are not technological changes. It is actually process change and skill set. The way we operate can also bring in some security vulnerabilities, and you should always look at that aspects whenever you plan for security. Now, one aspect that I think very simple change, but it actually helped me a lot is this. So even if you are a self-organized team, okay, put your developers, put your BAs, put your managers inside your team. That's all fine. But make sure your testers and UX people stay outside your system. They know nothing about system. They know how the system is developed. Say, for example, if you're doing microservices, from a QA standpoint or an UX standpoint, logically also, they cannot say, okay, I'm going to develop it for this service. No. They need to have a holistic perspective. Even if you consider from UX standpoint, they need to give a user experience holistically. They cannot say that I'm constrained with this. So UX and QA, you can always plan, even though they are modular people, you make a separate module. And then from there, if you let access, probably one thing is across the services, if there is any loophole, they will be the first person to catch it. And that gives us that flexibility. And that's one thing that we can think from the process standpoint. Lesser is better. That's the idea. So always relate. Okay. In fact, it's actually in two ways it is good. Always think you make less number of APIs outside. It's always better. And then document your API. Documenting in the sense you make documents. You are making it visible to many people actually. And many people consider that Agile. We are working in Agile. Agile doesn't need documentation. Agile needs documentations. Whether you are having Agile or Agile, no Agile, it still needs documentations. Otherwise, people cannot use it. And then keep creators, consumer separate. And this is one key aspect. So if that's just what we see. So I'm considering even QA and UX as a consumer, not as a creators. So they are just going to consume, treat them as a consumers. Service resources are internal. And this I can show, I think in one of our previous classes, we saw a microservices sample in which we clearly segregated the database. Even though multiple systems uses Postgres directly, we made sure that each one of this microservice uses different schema altogether, which means one cannot corrupt another system even intentionally or unintentionally. That's what we actually raised a boundary. Expose only friendly APIs, which means it is not like you have a system and then the system exposes 100. Do not expose that 100 to outside. Safeguard your APIs, keep it as internal as possible. Only what is required for other people, expose it, because it can cost you two things. One is security, another one is versioning. If you expose it, you need to consider that for versioning. Versioning is one of the bigger headache. So expose only what is required to the external people, because once you expose, it's really hard to change, because third-party people might have developed the systems based on that already. And you are owner of the client. Okay, that's very important. In some teams, they do this actually. So they write REST APIs in microservices, and then how the other parts callers, they just write a fiend client from their side. Say, for example, service A exposes n number of services, and service B needs service A. Service B developers will develop fiend client because it's very easy, and that's how they develop. And service A doesn't own it. But at the end of the day, you need to build it, because you need to control how your APIs are being used. By exposing it to other people, means service B used it, service C used it, service D developed their own code. Now, if you are making a change, all these three people have to change. It's not just a security, even maintainability will be a problem. So make sure who writes the service has to write the client also. Now, custom client for resources, that is not compulsory. Other last 3 points that you see, it's just optional, but it just helps. So custom client in the sense, you need to write a client in such a way that the client itself has a level of security. That's a good practice if you really have time and then real intention to secure your systems. And boundary checks, type safety, static analysis, Arc unit. And this is the place somewhere you can relate it. The Java module system that we talked last week is for this. You are making sure that your modules, your services are boundary checked. even unintentionally, you cannot call a package that is not supposed to be used. So that is the thing. So you can do static analysis. Arc unit. Arc unit is highly underrated tool. We can have a session on Arc unit later. It can save a lot of your time, not just for security, for a lot of other things also. And auto-generate code. Auto-generation, code generation is considered for long term. Code generation is considered a bad practice. Maybe code generation people use it at the beginning of the project for boilerplate code, but today's code generators has come long way. Dynamic proxies are one medium of generating codes. You can generate through generated sources also. For example, JOVQ works in that way. So always look at generate code, because the more you generate, it's easier to modify that piece of code. That is one thing. So lessons, we safeguard almost everything, but attacker needs just one weak link. Keep that in mind before you design your system. We do not make software that will not fail. Actually, we are making softwares where how quick that we can recover is the only measurement that we can do today. So always put your monitoring, all that in check before you expose your thing to the final product. That's how you can safeguard. These are the lessons that I learned. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Any doubts?
Just one thing I would like to add is also you have to always, this is my opinion personal, but you should always add audit trails wherever there's a relevant operation, because I've seen many times breaches are not discoverable simply because there's no audit trail of what happened in the system.
Yes,
Just
Girish,
wanted to let
that is just what I told in one of the breach also. The service to service communication we never logged, and the corruption was not part of our log system actually. It made the breach really bad. Yeah, these kind of topics, I mean, even I do not pay attention usually in security. But if you are working from bank or something, nowadays you need to go through all this. This is actually enforced now. We need to attend a lot of trainings for this. In bank and financial institution, this is a highly important topic.
Yes, but the point is that most of us at some point of time will work in an application which is facing the internet, and whatever we discuss today will become essential for any such application. And even though even if an application doesn't sit on the internet, the problem is that even if it contains sensitive information, and although it's not on the internet, but some internet facing application is compromised, that also means that our application can also be compromised if it doesn't have the required checks. So I would say that whether we like it or not, application security is slowly becoming almost paramount now, given that all of us are running after, how do I make use of this data? How do I, somehow find an insight from this data? So everybody is putting their data out for everyone else to consume. And, the whole data is the new oil economy is, also opening up us more and more to such kind of security breaches and incidents.
Bang on point. So in fact, you put an interesting point. Okay, guys, we need to remember this. We are no longer securing our endpoints. What we are trying to secure is the data, nothing else, because the data is becoming more and more important. Our data in today's world, it's not just stays within our system. It travels with a lot of systems. For example, we run with integration system where we get the data from 3 levels of systems. We go to one system and that system talks to another system and that system talks to another system. And any one of this person can be a weak link for us. And we need to put our process right. So one question that is coming from Sanjay: how do we make system PCI compliant? To be honest, Sanjay, I'm not sure about the PCI, but what I know is there is a lot of securities. Application security is one part. That itself is a big ocean. But PCI, I think they will look at the auditing, how you audit, the process you follow, everything. In fact, there are some people I know there are highly paid security professionals. They don't even know ABCD of the code. All that they do is they just come to your company and then check how you are storing the document, how you are creating the documents, how you are communicating the documents, and they will audit and then give the reports. And that is where complaints comes into picture. But I'm not sure about that.
I'll add whatever I know about PCI. I'm not an expert, but I'll tell you whatever I know. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So that's the entire, standard, PCI DSS. So what exactly happens is that if you have an application or a platform which is processing payment data, and payment data usually is either debit cards or credit cards or account numbers. So what the payment industry did was, if you are going to process that payment card data, you need to ensure some safeguards. So like, what are those safeguards? Those safeguards, something as simple as that, you will ensure that no CVV numbers are printed as it is. You mask them when you're printing in the logs. You also, it kind of brings in the concept of encryption of data at rest and in transit. So all those things come in. If I remember correctly, there are I think 15 or 17 basically questionnaires which any PCI compliance, when an activity happens, you go through, where you have to basically answer those questions and ensure that your product is compliant. Now, to give you an example, uh, uh, okay, you might have heard of a popular product called as APG, which is a API management layer from Google. It's API management platform. Now, a lot of banks install APG. So now those platforms or those systems need to be PCI compliant, because they will be, processing payment card data. Now, to give an additional example, there might be a healthcare provider which is also using APG. There might be a telecom provider which is also using APG. Now, it's their call whether they want to make that APG instance PCI compliant or not. So that's why it becomes. So, I hope that gives you some brief about what makes a system PCI compliant, or the list of things somebody should do. It's more the challenge with such kind of compliance standards, or if I think there's something called as BS 27001 in the UK, which is again a British security standard. The challenge with all these certifications or compliance is, yes, also GDPR, is that these are all afterthoughts. And nobody thinks of this when you're designing the system. People think of this when the system is already in production. Oh, now I have to adhere to this also. It's like a box to be ticked. It's a bit like, I don't know if you've heard a term called a Sarbanes-Oxley or SOX compliance. It's a very old term, but very much a challenge for a lot of people who deal with applications who are responsible for compliance. So that's what's happening. A lot of to take Satish's thought a bit further, I think Satish also mentioned, is that we should look at security as the first step, not as the last step. So that's what is happening with any of these standards as well. We look at these standards. Okay, yeah, we'll do it later, or we'll do it when it's a bit the philosophy is like we'll cross the bridge when we come to it. So that is where I think things become quite a bit challenging, because changing things once they're already done is much more complicated than designing things or addressing things when they are starting up. So that's my whatever knowledge I had on
just from the technical standpoint, because I don't want to do any session without mentioning technology. So okay, so most of them are theoretical, but let us match this with this one. So most critical part is data security. Data security in the sense, you have a data, and in that data, based on the role, you are going to enable or disable certain fields, and that is the tricky problem actually. So it's not just at the endpoint. Consider that the endpoint is open for everybody, but in the endpoint, if I'm a manager, I need to see certain things. If I'm an employee, I need to see certain things. And that is the place where we have certain aspects to be taken care of. Even if you look at GPDR, these are all the things that we'll have. So 3 aspects that I know. One, we will do something called masking. For example, if there is a account number or a credit card number, we will just show the last 4 digits. Everything else will be marked with cross sign. That is one thing that we will do. Just for security sake. Then we will do something called JSON views, where JSON views, there you know that there is something called JSON view. So where we can control based on certain cases, you can say, okay, in this JSON, these are all the only aspects that I'm going to show. This is one. And apart from that, every time you show a data or you store a data, we will put a time to expire also, which means, for example, there are certain standards, I think GDPR, I think so. So if you are giving a personal information to any companies, beyond certain point of time, that company should not store the data. That is the idea. So every time we store a data, we will put with the expiry date also. On that expiry date, it will be sent to trash. So these are all the aspects that we'll follow for the data security.
GDPR is a regulation from the European Union, which stands for General Data Protection Review, which basically, as Satish said, first focuses upon whatever personally identifiable information or PII data you store of a external consumer. You have to first get consent. You have to share how you're storing it, how you're using it. When GDPR is again more legalese than, or legal terms than actual things, but it is something which both application developers and designers have to factor in when they are implementing or designing solutions. Because one easy way where most service providers, let me be very clear about it. If, for example, if you are working for as a vendor to another organization, you will say, well, we are just processing data. We are just data processors. We are not the what is, I think there's a terminology there. I can't remember the second term. Something called as data processor and a data owner or something. I'm sorry, I can't remember it. So I'll not try to. Basically, the point is that we are just the intermediary through which the data is going through. We don't own the data, we are neither the organization or system asking for the data. So that's how most service providers get away with GDPR compliance. I have seen this, that's why I'm telling you from personal experience, but there's still regulations around this. So that's when it took me itself like 2-3 sessions to understand what GDPR is. That's how, what do you say? It is easy to understand. It depends on how good it's been explained or what context. So just, I know I'm maybe butting into whatever Satish is adding to, so sorry for that, but just trying to share whatever I have seen.
No. In fact, it's a good thing. From an interview point of view, let us always go to that also. So you might be asked about these things. Identity, access, IAM, and then API marketplaces, API gateways, and not API gateways. This APIG that you mentioned, right? What is it called? I mean, what is that area is called for? API management, right?
API management, yes.
Yeah. So if you just go behind the screen, this is what they are trying to do. Because these kind of things that is not related to your functionality, this is non-functional requirement, right? If you want to handle security, what is this IAM? This is just my personal opinion, guys, actually. So what is this IAM? Or these kind of API gateways will help us. API managements will help us. They take care of this kind of complaints, all that stuff to some extent, because we are exposing them to outside world. And in that way, we are safeguarded. And that's why today, in many of the microservices that we see, they do not implement security on their own. They use any of the IAM, like Keycloak, or Okta, Auth0, or something like that. And this is for that purpose, actually, because security keeps going with complexity. So this IAM kind of people, they will upgrade on behalf of us. We can safely write our applications. This is one shortcut, actually.
I think there was a session yesterday or day before yesterday. Again, since I am aware of it, again from I think WSO2, which spoke about how to protect your APIs using WSO2 identity management server. So when you're talking about something very different, that you have an API, you have an identity management server. How do they work? I know it's you can speak about like they might be doing a shameless product promotion, but to understand those concepts, it is, I would say, not a bad thing to explore. I think last time somebody had graciously put the YouTube video. I'll try and find it and share it with everyone, if possible, right now or in the next session, whenever we have that.
Okay, so if that's all the question, I think I can go to the next topic. Usually, whenever we discuss, right, we'll keep one topic that is like this, and we'll keep one lighter topic. So shall we go to the next topic?
Yeah, sure, Satish.
Okay, so this topic again, guys, it's related to process kind of interview question that we will have. Last week we discussed about stand-ups. So this week we will discuss about different ceremony. So there is consider you are running an agile. I mean, usually the complaint is agile, that agile doesn't scale. We all talk about scrums, but scrums can have only pizza-sized teams, that is 8-member team. As a good practice, we cannot go beyond 8-member team. In those kind of cases, how do you scale your agile? What are all the practices that you follow to scale your agile? Let us consider that. Let us take it from the entry sake, because this is how the questions will come. We'll try to answer it from there. Anybody can pitch in and then answer. We will keep answering for that. So the questions will be, how do you scale agile? Agile in scale, all this, you'll have a lot of articles. So how do you scale an agile? Where, say, for example, I have a 80-member team. Each team has a scrum on their own, and then each team has a scrum owner, scrum master, and then as a boss, I would like to have agile in my team. So 80-member team, how do you handle agile? Do I put everybody into single scrum, or how do I handle it? Can anyone tell me the practice that is used in this?
I think it's probably you're talking about SAFe, which is, but I don't know anything apart from a technical.
Okay, we call it Scrum of Scrums. The idea behind Scrum of Scrum is, in case if you have a larger team and then you want to scale, there are a lot of other aspects also to guys. So I'm just taking only one aspects to it. Yeah. So Sanjay, yes, Sanjay, can you just share your thoughts? You can unmute and then you can share your thoughts. Sanjay's answer is perfect. That is all that we need to know. Sanjay.
Yeah, sorry. So we also follow this kind of mechanism. We have smaller teams, like 6 developers and 1 Scrum Master, and there's something called a Scrum of Scrum. So whenever we have some inter-team issues, so that's being discussed under this Scrum of Scrum meetings.
Okay, so now we'll get little detail about Scrum of Scrum. What is the practical problems that you will see in Scrum of Scrum, and how do we address this also? So consider you are running an 80-member team. Like Sanjay said, it's not possible if you are managing it, your management team, and then you cannot go and sit with 80 members, and you want to do agile practices. You want to make sure everybody understand that it is agile, and then all will go to agile. So now in that case, how do you handle this? You will take up a route called Scrum of Scrum. What happens in Scrum of Scrum is, we will split our teams into smaller chunks, that is 8 or 6 maximum. So that those teams will have a stand-up Scrum ceremonies internally they are meeting, and then you just pick up the Scrum masters in the team who knows what is happening in that team, and then they all will come together, and then they will have, in the evening they will have another meeting with the boss, and then that is called Scrum of Scrum. So which means if you are 8-member team, 8 into 8, 64 members, you split actually, and then these 8 people will attend a meeting with boss, so he can have a holistic view on the progress. Okay, so now here comes the problem. One problem that we faced while we implement this in practice is this particular person becomes a bottleneck, because in software, it's not just in software, in engineer, one of the key aspects is the loss of information when you go across people. For example, if you keep giving status to one person, and then he go and give the status, sometimes it might be misleading also. He might be understanding it in a different manner. And also we are not keeping the project in sync. In those kind of Scrum of Scrum, no idea what happens there. Okay, fine. Yeah. So this is not just for you, Sanjay, it's for everybody. In fact, for me also, it was a myth for long time. So this is what happens. So one of your representative will go and give the status. Again, now we depend on people and this person's knowledge, and sometimes this becomes a powerful role and it causes a lot of problems also. So how we address this problem in one of the team that we engaged is, we never had a single Scrum Master, which means we will keep rotating. For example, if it is an 8-member team, this week, if I am a Scrum Master, next week, Sanjay is a Scrum Master. Next week, Souvik is a Scrum Master. What we are making sure is, Sanjay should be knowing everything that happens in the team. Souvik should be knowing everything happens in the team. And we are also making sure that we do not depend on single person. And in this way, we are sharing the knowledge across the team. We are sharing the responsibility across the team. And at any point in time, you go and talk to the team will be in sync, because everybody knows what is happening in the team, how the communication has gone to the other people in the team. So this is one of the practice that we will follow. So Scrum of two things. If someone asks about Scrum of Scrum, say that if you want to scale Agile into larger teams, split the teams, have Scrum meetings, and then have one Scrum Master have a meeting for that. That is called Scrum of Scrum. And if you want to optimize this process further, make sure this Scrum Master is a rolling based. It is not one single individual, because the more that you keep it in this way, a longer run, it becomes mere formality.